Hello, guys, and welcome to a new episode of DeFi Talks. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between a good and a bad project, whether that be in crypto, DeFi, NFTs, it doesn't matter. We're just going to generalize basically and try to figure out what's at the bottom of like a good project and what's at the bottom of a bad project. Today, I'm going to have Jake with me. Hi, Jake.
Hey, Sharif. Hey, guys. Super excited to talk about good versus bad projects today.
And yeah, if you like this, guys, please share and let's just jump right into it. So, recently, a lot of projects have been losing a lot of their money. You see this, the market is just on a downward trajectory, and it has been for the last 6 months, I think, probably even more. So, a lot of money that was in the system is just basically disappearing. And we have been thinking about that. Why? Why is that happening? Why were projects that were doing really well and had very high market caps and had a lot of volume? That why don't they have the same volume right now? The same user base? Why have people abandoned a lot of different projects, and why have a lot of different projects failed? After talking about it for a bit, this is what we have came up with. So the first thing that we had to look at is what does the project really do, and is there utility behind it? Some projects, like, they don't make any sense. People will tell you the rundown on it and why it's so great, but most likely it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. And if that's what's happening, then that's a big red flag, because projects should make sense. They should be simple enough for the average user to understand and use. Otherwise, what's the point? Jake, do you have any experience with projects that are not really understand, like you don't know what the reason for its existence is?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to back up for a minute or two, what we're really going to lay down here is what we think are like a roadmap of the five most important steps when analyzing a project, starting with the utility, like Sharif says, what does it even do? And yeah, of course, I've run into plenty of projects that don't necessarily, ring off the charts in terms of utility and screaming value to the marketplace. The bigger thing I look out for is like a red flag around utility. For example, when we're at events or I'm talking to someone and meet someone and talk about their project, that's my first question. And there's two ways to answer that question. Okay. You can say like, oh, well, this thing, so certain people, they always talk about like how well the token's doing or the rewards or the airdrops or whatever, the incentives. They don't really talk about the project. So this right away is a huge red flag. And so I think probably 80 to 90% of crypto projects are in this ballpark. Like, they might have good intentions, but they're not really solving a problem in the marketplace or adding specific niche value. And I think we're going to give plenty of examples of those that are doing well. But yeah, across the board, I don't know if I'm going to just burn one project that I've learned about, but that's how I like spot the red flag projects. What about you, Sharif? What do you think?
I've seen a lot of projects where I don't understand how it works. I don't get how they get their money or their users or their numbers. I just don't get it. Like, where is the value coming from? A lot of those projects, in my opinion, are usually related to yield farming. I don't understand it. Maybe someone else does. Maybe it makes sense, but I just think it just seems fishy. Like, where is the value really coming from? Is it coming from just people holding on to a token? Because that seems to me like a recipe for disaster. If you can't really do anything with it, then you don't actually have the money that your account says you have. So that's one example of a project where I don't understand the functionality of it. I don't understand where the money is being generated, and so I just tend to stay away from them. Uh, that's been that's saved me a lot of headaches so far. So I'm going to keep going with that. But let's just reverse that a little bit and talk about a project that does make sense. Are there any projects that make sense that you know of?
Yeah, the easiest example here is Ethereum, right? So, for example, Ethereum provides plenty of value. For example, it was really the first platform that allowed you to show up with the Solidity programming language and build your own blockchain project on the Ethereum mainnet. So things like that. And then the other thing that, for example, the ETH token holds that Matt Rosen always uses as an example in our meetups. It's like, listen, you need to have the ETH token, the governance token for the Ethereum mainnet, to pay the gas fees to use Ethereum across the board. This is one of the main reasons to have it. So you always need a little bit of pocket change in your wallet at minimum, just to use the network. So that's a small example. I'm sure you have some more, Sharif.
I just want to double down on Ethereum because it reminds me of it's like a game Roblox where they just let the people build their own games inside of the game, which is very interesting to me. Like the idea that you could just give somebody the ability to create these like complex programs that help you do a lot of different things, like run financial systems or run like Internet of Things, or there's a whole bunch of use cases for smart contracts that are being tested out at the moment, and they're all enabled by these providers like Ethereum. So I want to double down and say, like, yes, it is that's a good project. I understand how it works. I understand why the token is priced the way it is, because like you said, you need the token to do things on the network, and the network is it's got a lot of big projects built on top of it, which is also another good sign. Generally, like bad projects are in their own ecosystem. They're just like isolated. They don't interact well with the outside world, and I don't think that that's true of Ethereum. So yeah, that's one of the best companies in my opinion. Another thing that we start. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Jake?
Yeah, I'd love to point out one thing to reinforce what you're talking about, just for those who may not know. But when Bitcoin was successful in the early days, there was no programming aspect, no solidity, no ability to therefore have smart contracts. So that was within all this other value that we're exemplifying for Ethereum. The smart contracts feature was a massive differentiator between Ethereum and Bitcoin. And that's also why Ethereum has outpaced Bitcoin in gains and growth. For its size, just because of the smart contract element. And then all these other projects that work on mainnet, they have smart contracts within them. So just wanted to add that into our narrative. That's how important Ethereum was. They also showed up with that. Yeah, go ahead, Sharif.
I think it's important to know also that any project, so this is another really great characteristic of good projects, is that they let the user do things of value. So like YouTube lets you make videos. Ethereum lets you make smart contracts. TikTok lets you make content. So all of these different apps that are really popular, they all enable the user to be creative and to do things that are worthwhile on some level. So that's something to really look out for. If a platform or an app or a project lets you do something better with your time, then it's definitely like something you should put an eye on. I wanted to go to talking about talk less about the project and talk more about the people now. So another great way to understand a project is who's running it, who's the creator, who are the developers, who's the team? Do you know them? Do you have access to them? Are they anonymous? Do they have their information out there, or do they have emails on their sites so that you can contact them and discuss things, or are they just completely hidden from the world? That's a big sign right there. If a creator, so Bitcoin actually goes and just really makes that, like, it invalidates that, because the creators are anon and it is a good project. But generally anon projects, in my opinion, tend to not be that great. They might have something malicious in them. They might be anon for that reason. Are there any examples that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, when you come to an anonymous project, anonymous founders, people who would just go by an alias and you have no clue who they are in real life. Our group, we have some projects that use, for example, Sushi Swap within them. The people who have heavily used Sushi token and platform. And for example, there was a Chef Nomi individual, one of the co-founders, who sold a whole bunch of the token, and ever since it never has really been the same. And just what we're talking about here, guys, is like, most people will do something weird when no one's looking, right? Like even envision your own behavior on the subway or something. You might like pick your nose when no one is looking, right? Like we have this social accountability and this tribal accountability. And if you're someone in Web3 who by an alias built this big project that may in a centralized fashion control this money, and nobody knows who you really are walking around day to day on the streets, like you could just do something wrong. Like if no one's holding you accountable, there's no reason why you might just try to do something wrong because you can get away with it because there's zero accountability. So that's why an anonymous project, it's like a ticking time bomb. It might not go off, but it really could in a devastating way. And I think we've seen a lot of anonymous projects have that happen.
I agree with you. So one of the rules of this country, at least, is that most of the time you have to do business. Like you have to know your customer. That's one of the rules is KYC. So putting your information out there, like that's also part of GDPR, where you have to leave an email on your website so that if somebody wants to take down your content, they can message you. Like the idea here is if you're not interacting with your creation, it could just do really bad things and you could just skip on all of the consequences, just like Jake said. It doesn't seem fair to me that some people have to work and make their projects under one standard and other people get to do it in a different standard. Like I'm all for anonymity and privacy, but when you're making financial apps and systems that are likely to, like you said, hold a lot of money and maybe even change the world or hurt a lot of people, you should probably have your information out there just as a sign of trust and as a sign of goodwill. So with me, Anon is not a great idea.
Yeah, it's so hard for me to imagine. Like, think about what it's like to be an anonymous founder in Web3. Like, think about it, right? Like, we go to these conferences and we follow writers and bloggers and people in this space. If you were an anonymous founder, you could never show up to a live event. You could never build the real community. You know, like there's no such thing as being able to have the same life and the same, especially if you're going to grow a big project. All the big projects have doxed or, open founders. We know who they are. I just can't possibly imagine one of these projects getting to the size that it could, like massive. I guess sushi's maybe the biggest one. But you're just so limited in what you can do if you're anon. And so therefore you also have to think like, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to limit themselves and constrain themselves and limit themselves by doing that? It's like, well, there's some other advantages like we've talked about. If you want to do something crazy and rug pull or whatever, then there's just no accountability. So it is like a big give and take. And in my opinion, like Sharif is mentioning too, it's just a big red flag.
So I want to go back and mention something that we talked about with the first point, and that's like, where does the money come from? So a lot of these successful projects, they're subsidized either by VC money, government money. It doesn't really matter. They're just getting a lot of money from somewhere to build these projects, and they pump it into the system to, one, pay for the people that are generating the content or the smart contracts or whatever value is for the app, and then two, for paying the users to use the app and ensuring that they don't have to pay a lot or that they give them the best price, even if that price is disingenuous. So a Web2 project that does this is Uber. Uber Eats and Uber. I'll just focus on Uber Eats specifically because I have more experience with that. They used to give rewards out for their drivers and also cover a lot of free meals and provide better prices on Uber than you would get it in real life. And so this created a false narrative for the whole fast food industry that you can get this at this price. And if you're a driver, you can just make a lot of money, which right now isn't true because they're not pumping as much money into subsidizing it because it's big. So if you look at the time scale, you see that it starts off really, really good, and then it becomes worse and worse and worse, and it drags other things down with it. And this one of the examples of that are related to Web3 that we can mention right now is what happened recently with Terra and UST and Luna. They just lost all their value, and all the things that were built on top of them are now basically useless until they figure out a way around this. So I feel like there needs to be a positive consistency and like a realism to how apps present what they're doing and explain like where the money is coming from and why do we get better prices? How do I get 20% on my how do I get 20% yield when nothing pays more than it's like 7% in the real world, and that's on like risky assets. Am I making it like, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other crossover examples for people out there is that everybody knows there's tech companies traded on the NASDAQ that they might go for like 25 to 50 to 75 times earnings. So they're super overly traded and they don't even have any profitability. Another, you talk about Uber, but there's a lot of these tech companies, for example, Uber, I'm pretty sure it's never actually turned a profit. So it's so heavily subsidized by highly traded stock pricing, other types of funding. There's plenty of ways that you can have your company be propped up. There's so many examples. Facebook was the case as well. It didn't make money for years and years. Even after IPO, they didn't even have a monetization model for about 2 years. So this is what we're talking about. And in crypto, guys, this might work in Silicon Valley where you have legitimate investors writing hundreds of millions of dollars of checks to companies to get them to a place where they will be potentially profitable. I think in crypto, the difference is that these things are just happening 10x, 25x of the speed. So when your subsidies, if there's any warning sign of subsidies running out, people just might leave and go to another project and just vanish. Like things just happen so fast. So it's really important twofold when you're focusing on doing your research to really understand like how a company is being supported, if there's subsidies, if there's a plan for tapering down those subsidies, and that sort of thing. So another interesting mention with Terra is that if you understand how Anchor Protocol worked, they had this massive reward pool that they were just dishing out, the 20% APR, right? And you had this graph, you could probably Google it now, where you could see that the subsidies and the rewards were running out. So I don't know if there was something to do with that people kind of knew eventually the music was going to stop, but it's really important to pay attention to how projects are fueled so you can decide if it's a good one or a bad one. I think let's transition into talking about our fourth pillar today about of our top 5 is community. I think if there's a community around the project, it's a whole different world and it feels so much better and safer, and there's people to talk to and learn from. Sharif, I know you really believe in crypto communities. What about what are some of your favorite communities? How you know it's a good project?
So when I see communities looking out for each other, like people in the community are looking out for each other, and there's constant interactions between the people that are building these projects and the people that are like supporting these projects, I know that it's a good project and that it will be successful because just the genuine approach, it's a simple thing, right? Like just a genuine connection is a very simple thing. You just care about the people that are helping you. You care about the people that are like volunteering their time or money to help you with your project or to like monitor your community or to help you with advertising and marketing. And you get so much farther ahead. And those people that you show loyalty to will show loyalty back to you as a like leader of a project. So there's a dynamic there where if you have the right connection with your fans and you do it in a genuine way, you can grow at a much faster and a much more stable rate than other companies that don't take the time to communicate with their fans and grow their communities and maintain a consistent connection with people. I feel like that just brings along with it a lot of social obligation and like having people have expectations for your life and being responsible for a big project and a big community makes people just better people, in my opinion. So I like seeing projects that have communities around them. And I especially like it when the leaders and the developers and the creators are close to the rest of the community. Are there any examples that you have, Jake?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have the best example of a community besides maybe our grassroots small example here with Ricochet here in Philly. But yeah, community is so big. I have two things to add to that. For example, if you are pursuing a great project, then you're working on utility, and people in the community, therefore, are talking about how they use your project, right? Like Matt Rosen is giving examples about how he uses Thorchain and the Rune token, and how he uses that blockchain to send to tokens all around the world to his people that he works with. Um, that's one benefit if you're in a community and you're participating in it, is just learning from other people about how they're using the platform or the protocol or the blockchain or whatever it is that you're a part of. It's just learning from the community, and yeah, benefiting from all the social aspect. And it can be as simple, it could be a grassroots local. It could also be as simple as just a real, truly thriving Discord or Telegram, or really even just like a Twitter and a specific hashtag. Like we talk about the developers who are helping with Ricochet and the Rex Force, and they have their own hashtag on Twitter, and just things like that can be indicators of a really good thing that's going on in Web3. When you do have this potential sea of landmines to avoid, these are another community. There is another healthy indicator. So besides that, I think the final thing to talk about, if you have a really truly useful project, step one, if you know who the founders are and they seem like a good fit to lead it, if you understand the money flow, and then if you identify a community, really it's just about roadmap and giving a timeline for the future of here's what we're going to try to do, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. This is super important because there's too many projects that are just created on a whim, and you can tell because there is no roadmap. So I don't know if you have a particular example in mind or things that make you happy when you look at a roadmap, Sharif, but what do you have to add about roadmaps for crypto projects?
Having a good roadmap is a way to communicate to the world that you are not just playing around. Like, this is a serious thing that you've taken the time to think about, and you've taken the time to write all these thoughts down and explain how you're going to move on in the future. You kind of write a promise down of like, all right, in a year or two, you should expect this to have happened. In 3 years, you should expect that. Like, you don't have to write that far down the line. But the idea is if you just make those promises and you engage a community, just like we said in the last point, and you maintain that consistency, you are able to get way farther ahead, because there'll be VC people, there'll be people that are just passionate about the things that you're passionate about, that are willing to fund you or make connections to other companies that might help you out if they see that you know what you're talking about and you actually have a plan.
Yeah. And what I really think is vital for a roadmap is within that plan, you can look back at it as a user and a community member and analyze, like, hey, are these founders really doing what they said they were going to do? And you can see not only how serious they are about that plan and following that plan, because that's the point of a plan, but also like there could be unexpected events that come up, and then you do have milestone evolutions, and you can see how they rolled with the punches and maybe were agile and nimble and pivoted with the marketplace. Or for example, if you have massive events like this Terra fallout, maybe you should change your roadmap, and you can look at how active they were in not only the initial planning, but how flexible they were in the state of the marketplace. So that's most of what I have to add for roadmaps. What else do you have to say, Sharif, about how to pick a good versus a bad project in crypto?
Just take the time and don't make decisions on a whim or because you saw it in an article or on a YouTube video. A lot of people get paid to talk about dumb coins or dumb projects that have no utility, that are created in 6 months, just sitting there, right? Like, they pump money into it, they get you to follow the hype train, and you get screwed over. That's just one way you can get screwed over, by investing in a bad company. So just take the time and slow down. There will always be wins and loses. Just choose each battle right. Don't don't invest in something if you're not sure, things about it and you see a future for the project and you like what it does and understand what it does, most importantly. Now I want to end this, but before we want to end this, I just want to go and talk about the difference between a good and a great project, because there's a lot of projects that I'm just like, this is great. This is amazing. I hope this company exists forever. And then there's projects that are just like good, they serve a purpose. And if something better comes along, which most likely will happen within the next 2 years, then you can just jump onto the next best thing. But when you find a great project, something that is like solid and won't be going anywhere anytime soon, you should know what those projects are. I want to go about explaining how I choose, like, what is a great project? What is a great project to me? Something that has longevity, that lasts for years and years, and they have plans and they have developers and they have a community that has lasted for like 3, 4, 5 years. That's a great company, because it's very hard to make things last and to keep momentum going. So they have to have had at least some success with dealing with people and with continuing to make the right decisions. So what about you, Jake? What do you think makes a great project?
Yeah, everything you said. And in addition to that, I think, are you truly unique? Usually we look at these unicorns in tech and we look at these big top 10, top 25 crypto projects, and they're there because they're doing something that no one else has quite gotten right. And usually that means you showed up and you were second or third in the marketplace, and then you figured out what the incumbent was doing improperly. And it's like, I'm going to fix this problem, and then you just stay on that problem and stick ahead of it, and then build out steps 2 through 5. I really think that's it. That's the number one thing is, do you solve this super, super challenging problem or unique problem? Because there's plenty of projects where it's like, hey, this is a slightly sharper saw. I don't really care about that, right? But if you show up with like a laser cutter and everyone's using sharp saws, that's what we're talking about. So within that, I think there's ways to be a huge crypto project, as long as you are doing something unique and then also be known for something else. Like, are your founders particularly special? And you have some sort of community that is unbelievable, or a story that is unbelievable. And there's other things in this podcast that we haven't even touched. For example, you could have social good. You could be trying to have a community impact and be building something, putting your money into protecting people from homelessness, or planting trees for the environment, or cleaning up the oceans, or doing anything like this, some social or ecological positive good. Things like this are other ways to really spot a great project versus a good project. And those are worth studying and maybe investing in, or just talking about, and that sort of thing, not financial advice, but, all just education about how we do it. But yeah, that's what I think is great versus good, Sharif. That's all I got for that.
I have one last thing that I want to mention, and it's honestly the most important thing for me, and that is a company that is transparent and honest. To me, is the best company, because everything goes up and down. Everybody has bad days, weeks, months, years. Everybody has bad developers or managers or weird experiences where people did messed up stuff under the name of a company or a brand or whatever. That happens. But if a company or a project is always honest and upfront about what's going on and actively working on solutions to all of the problems that hurt people, and put effort into reimbursing people and helping people like find positive things in their project, that just to me is like, that's great. Some examples I really want to point to is MetaMask, Asus, Firefox, Coinbase. I've had amazing experiences with these products throughout my life. Asus just respects your privacy. They build laptops thinking ahead. They are really well at continuing and supporting you if you have a problem. And I just think that they really do care about their users. Coinbase has been facilitating financial transactions that are better for like I don't know, 5 years. I have no idea how many years, but I've known about them for like years now. I've been using them for my business for years now. Firefox has been the same consistent project for the last 20 years. It has been amazing. I've never had an issue with it. And MetaMask stays true to a decentralized network. It allows you to own your own stuff, and that's very rare. So just look out for those great projects and make sure to reward them when you do see them, and try to stay away from the bad ones. My name is Sharif. This was another episode of DeFi Talks. If you guys are around in July, please check out DeFi Philly. That we have a conference. It's going to be on July 8th. If you check the description down below, I will leave a discount code. We'd love to see you there. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, guys.